Good morning. Who's from Spain but not from the Basque Country? Bienvenido al norte. I arranged the weather for you people specially. Just wait 5 minutes. We have people here from Siberia. We have speakers from China, from Australia, from Brazil, from Canada, as well as most of the rest of Europe. So while most of you raised your hand there when I asked who was from Spain, it's actually a very international event, and I noticed from the badges lying in the front, the people who are not here yet, they're mostly the jet-lagged ones, and you will see them later. Given that we arranged this with only a couple of months' notice, I think it's a great first start. We already planned next year's event. You'll see the dates on the program there, 16th and 17th of June, because we've learned our lesson not to hold it on a Catholic holiday. So next year, hopefully, we'll outgrow this venue, and the following year we'll need a bigger venue. Okay, pragmatic, actionable, evidence-based guidance. It's our brand essence. It's what this company has stood for since 2008. And why we need the Kanban maturity model. For the last 2 years, Teodora Bozeva and I have been working on this, and today we're launching the 1.0 release after a 1-year beta program, and prior to that, 6 to 9 months of community preview. Why did we have to do that? Well, let's start off with this quote here. It is actually 2 years old now. I first used it in a keynote speech 2 years ago this month in the United States, but it's from an article in a UK journal. The UK wastes billions every year on failed Agile projects. There's a direct quote here. That was the headline. And here's the quote. More than half of CIOs think Agile methodology is now discredited, while 3/4 aren't prepared to defend it as a way of completing projects anymore. Additionally, half of CIOs think that Agile project processes are just an IT fad. That's pretty shocking. There is a massive misallocation of capital happening in the IT world. And quite a few of you work for financial institutions. You guys are the worst. You know the joke, they arrest the bank robber and they ask him, why does he rob banks? And his reply was, that's where the money is. I've sat in some of those meetings. I've sat across the table from the head of retail banking, and he looks at the CIO and he says, we need the new website. We need it faster. Just tell me what you need. How much money? How many more people? I'll get you the money. And where does he get the money? From the retail bank. It's stashed full of cash. And he just hands it to the IT department and they hire a whole bunch more people. The only smart CIOs I've run into have some kind of weird constraint. We worked with Raiffeisen Bank in Russia. And at the time, they had filled an entire tower block overlooking Gorky Park in central Moscow. And it was before the new Moscow city skyscrapers were completed. You could see them on the horizon. And the only reason that they had to figure out how to work smarter is because they could no longer stuff any more human beings into this building. So the CIO actually had to say to his colleagues, no, don't give me any more money. I don't know how to spend it. And that actually caused them to be smart. So one of the things that I've, as a business that we have been concerned with, and I personally have been concerned with, is this massive misallocation of capital. A pretty useless Agile coach in the United States working as a contractor earns over $300,000 per year. Just pause and let that sink in for a moment. We're not talking good, effective Agile, we're talking useless. They show up and they conduct a few ceremonies every morning and they go home feeling that they've achieved something. And they report practice adoption. And they make more than $300,000 US a year. And we know companies that have 40 or 50 of those people. There are financial institutions in London that have 40 or 50 of them, and they're paying them over 2,000 British pounds per day. Massive misallocation of capital because you've got lots of money, you're a bank, and you're not paying attention to how you're spending it. Now, these failures, like the ones that this article was pointing at, are usually defended by a litany of excuses. Our enterprise Agile transition would have produced meaningful results if only we had senior executive support. If only people didn't resist the changes. If only there was more trust. If only we had better KPIs. If only teams were willing to collaborate with each other more. If only we had more leadership. If only we had fewer dependencies. How many of these so far are resonating with you? Heard these around the office recently? If only customers were more responsive. If only we could prioritize better, we had better, finer-grained stories, we had direct access to customers, priorities didn't change so frequently, and planning wasn't so painful. If only we didn't measure the wrong things, we were organized differently, we had T-shaped people, whatever the heck that is, and we had true cross-functional teams, and we had capacity when we needed it. And I could go on. I've been doing this as a business now for more than 12 years, or about 12 years. And there's always some excuse for why we've spent a few million euros, pounds, dollars on very expensive people who hold ceremonies with small teams every day. And what do you have to show for it? Where is the business agility that everyone's been promising you? Right. But the Agile community has a solution for this. Let's get everyone together and hold a facilitated discussion. Because heck, we're good facilitators. And you can solve all the world's problems by getting people together and talking about it. How many of you really believe that? Yeah, the Agile coaches in the room have their hand up. If only facilitated discussions actually fixed any of these problems. And the problem is that there are people holding the discussions, they don't actually have any means to reason about the problem. They don't have the models, the framework, the language to discuss what's actually going wrong in their organizations. Because for a dozen years, they've just been doubling down on the same old stuff. It's not really making a difference. So, in our world, we believe in pragmatic, actionable, evidence-based guidance. Pragmatic, you can get it done. You don't need the chief executive's permission. One of the earliest Kanban implementations was at a company you might have heard of. They make laser printers. They're called Hewlett-Packard. They implemented Kanban at the laser printer division in Boise, Idaho in 2005 and 6, and they increased the productivity of the development on laser printers by 8 times. They reduced the lead time to produce a new revision of a laser printer from 21 months to 3.5 months. And the chief executive at the time was a lady called Carly Fiorino, and she didn't even know that any of that was going on. They didn't need anybody's permission because they had pragmatic advice. It was actionable. They knew what to do. And just a couple of middle managers, not doing anything special, just doing the job. They didn't have any extra budget. They didn't have any consultants. And my God, they certainly didn't have any agile coaches. Just think about that for a moment. 21 months down to 3.5 months. An 8 times improvement in the productivity of an entire business unit. Now, some of you have been to business school, I imagine. I know that Carlos has. And there's a couple of very good ones. You want to just look across the river there. So, if you've been to business school, you don't need to know anything about Hewlett-Packard laser printer business. But just from what you know about business in general, if you reduce the time to make something from 21 months to 3.5 months, what does that do to the performance of your business? It revolutionizes it. And how important were laser printers to Hewlett-Packard in 2005? Their main cash cow business. The most important thing to make sure that they had money to spend on everything else. One of the most important business agility initiatives probably in the history of the planet, and there wasn't an agile coach in sight. Think about that for a moment. All right, so we believe that there should be no wishful thinking. As soon as you find yourself saying, if only the chief executive had given us permission, you have wandered into the territory of wishful thinking. That's not pragmatism, it's wishful thinking. These are the words you need to listen for. If you hear them coming out of your mouth, you've already gone too far. You are making a mistake. You are spending money in a way that you shouldn't be. You need to stop and think about what can we get done with the constraints that we have. And if those constraints are that the chief executive isn't in the room, they haven't given us permission, we don't have a big budget to spend, well, that's fine. What can you do? Find something that makes a difference. And we have that advice, right? And people need to know what to do. They need to have models for understanding the world. Why do things take too long? Well, at Hewlett-Packard, they had something like 900 features in progress on these laser printers. And they came to the conclusion that was too many. And the right answer was about 90. So they had what I would describe as a difficult meeting. They called people into a room and they said, we have about 900 things in progress right now, and we need to cut that down to 90 before we leave the room today. 810 things have to wait until later, or we don't do them at all. Now, that's a non-trivial discussion, but we can teach you how to hold that discussion, how to think about what needs to happen now, what can wait until later, and if so, when, and what doesn't need to happen at all. There is language we can give you, models you can use to think about it. And they need to have the confidence that suggested actions will work. One of the largest reasons for inaction is fear. Fear that the actions aren't going to work. You need to help people get over that. They need to have a model that says, if we do this, we expect this outcome with a fairly high probability. And I would encourage you to stop reorganizing. The poster child for reorganization is a credit card company and bank in the United States called Capital One. 2 years ago, during our conference in the United States, which took place across the street from Capital One's headquarters, the people sitting in our audience from Capital One were reorganized twice during the conference. Typical Capital One employee reports having 5 different bosses in a single year. They're now on their 5th Enterprise Agile Transition Initiative. Anyone who calls themselves an agile coach or consultant of any worth in the United States has been fired by Capital One already. Right, start where you are and evolve. That's our approach. It's pragmatic. We're not there. We walk into your organization and say, oh, you need to reorganize as cross-functional teams. Or even worse, there's a bank originally headquartered just along the coast here. They're not here today. You other local banks, BBVA, Kutscher Bank, you know who I'm talking about. And when they decided they had to be enterprise agile, someone advised them, you need to DevOps. And for them, that meant taking 4,500 people and 2 different businesses and a campus in Mönchengladbach in Germany and merging these 2 separate subsidiary businesses into one. And 2 and a bit years later, they're still working on that problem. And they haven't got round to doing anything about the enterprise agility thing yet. Meanwhile, if they hadn't bothered with any of that, so another situation, I was meeting with a vice president of a credit card company, the biggest, ugliest one. And this was in London. And he was a pragmatic Scottish bloke like me. And he was the head of their IT services group. And he was telling me that some consultants had been in the previous week and told them that if they want to be agile, they need to DevOps. And what that meant was that his 700-person business unit had to merge with the other 700 and something people business unit that did software development into one single 1,500-person business unit with only one vice president. That gave him a 50% chance of survival. And he didn't like that idea very much. So I talked to him for a while and I said, okay, so the problem here is that your development teams feel that your IT services group doesn't service them fast enough and predictably enough. And he said, yes. I said, okay, why don't we just fix that? Why don't we just make your IT services predictable and reliable and a bit faster? We know how to do that. Let's get started. Let's not bother trying to merge 2 700-plus person business units into one. Reorganization often isn't pragmatic. It isn't actionable unless, hey, the chief executive's in the room. It's unpopular. Who loves being reorged? New boss, new business unit, maybe a new job title. People don't like that. It gets resisted and it causes long delays. What's enterprise agile about wasting more than 2 years reorganizing your company before you even get started? No funky named organizational units. There's an internet radio music streaming service that loses $1 billion a year, and their organization model has become rather trendy because it's got all these funky named organizational units, and people think they should copy it. To which my response is, did you also copy their $1 billion a year losses? It just doesn't strike me as a sensible way to run your business. You're not a music streaming service, and you don't lose $1 billion a year. Start where you are now and figure out how to fix the problems that you've got in your organization. And how do you do that? You make managers responsible and accountable for the bits of the business they actually own. Make your managers earn their paychecks, rather than spend your money on fancy consultants and contractors who don't actually do anything other than facilitate a few meetings every day. Start where you are and encourage better alignment and collaboration between groups. Not first reorganize into pods, squads, chapters, flocks, herds, packs, or mobs. No new identities. No one gets a new role, responsibility, or job title. How about people keep the job title they've got and just actually do their jobs properly? It's very remarkable how that will fix your business. Not first send everyone on a 2-day training course and hope they come back changed because we forced a new job title upon them, especially if it is a new funky name that no one quite understands. Something to do with some sport they don't play. People don't resist change, they resist being changed. This is from Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline. Stop trying to change the people. Right? And that not just the individuals, the social groups. You reorganize a social group, you break up one group, and you put the people into beautiful cross-functional teams or squads, pods, mobs, whatever they're called. They don't like that, at least not for a while. And while they're not liking it, they're not productive. And you've made your business worse and not better. Forced identity change, while it's actionable, you send someone off for 2 days of training, you give them a new job title, and if they don't like it, well, heck, we can always advertise their position and fill it with someone else. It's likely to invoke passive-aggressive resistance. Now, when I worked for Motorola in their mobile phone division, about 17 years ago now, a programmer who worked for me posted a blog post. Now, he was actually what we might call the agile lead in our organization at that time. And he was a fan of the changes I was making there. But his blog post was about his previous job and his previous manager. It articulated 22 ways that programmers can passively aggressively resist their manager's wishes without being caught. Because are they playing ping pong at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because they've had a really tough, hard day and achieved a lot and they're exhausted? Or are they playing ping pong because they hate their pointy-haired boss and ping pong beats the heck out of working? And how would you know? And good old-fashioned management school advice, manage by walking around. So you walk around your IT department and there's a bunch of programmers in the corner playing ping pong. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? You have no way of knowing. So we need better, more pragmatic, actionable, evidence-based guidance. So what has the Kanban community had to say about this? Well, until recently, our really only decent advice was hire someone called a Kanban with this professional credential called Kanban Coaching Professional, and we have a few in the room here. The KCPs in the room, stand up, please. And Peter Kirschbaumer, you're included. He's pretending. Okay, so there's a few of them, and some were shy and didn't want to stand up. Now, why was this good advice? Well, let me tell you, KCPs are capable of coaching a business unit, about 150 to 600 people, to a full Kanban implementation, enabling significant business agility. And one or two of the shy ones who didn't stand up have done this, but they haven't actually gone through the program and earned the little badge. KCPs can take a business unit to what we now call maturity level 3. That means that you have satisfied customers, that you're fit for purpose, that you meet your customers' expectations more or less all of the time, that you do things quickly, you do them with high quality, and you do them predictably. KCPs know how to drive an evolutionary change in an organization. They don't walk in and tell you to reorganize into pods, squads, mobs. They don't give people new job titles. They know how to start with what you do now and evolve from there. This little cartoon was commissioned for the cover of the Kanban book in 2009. And this shows the evolutionary change in action. We've got some visibility onto the process, the work that these people are doing, and you can tell from their conversation that it's not going so well. And then one of the team says, you know what, let's do something about that. So what we've got here is some stress. We've got some reflection mechanism, this meeting they're having in front of their board, and we've got an active leadership. And these are the three things you need for evolutionary change: a stressor, a reflection mechanism, and leadership. It's the magic formula. And we can train that. We can teach you how to put the stressors in the organization. Sometimes just a simple metric in a report, little chart put up on the wall, information radiator, that can be a stressor, particularly if it's got a target or an objective. Then you need a reflection mechanism, a way of talking about it. Why are things being delayed for so long? Let's talk about that. Let's look for root causes of delay and do something about them. Let's do something about it. Somebody needs to show the leadership. Now, in the Kanban method, we've codified a number of these stressors and a number of the reflection mechanisms. The reflection mechanisms are collectively known as the Kanban cadences. So these are prescriptive practices that come straight out of the book. So a coach's job is to come in and figure out where are you now and what's the appropriate stressor to add, the appropriate reflection mechanism to add, and then to gently kick someone in the ass and encourage them to show the leadership that's required. Steve McGee later on is going to talk about leadership, because you notice we have two beautiful arrows here for stressors and reflection mechanisms. We figured out we had to codify leadership so that we could train that, we could do leadership development. And we have that available now. That's a training class that we're offering from the second half of this year. And Steve's going to talk about a leadership model using Game of Thrones as the examples, because there's lots of both good and bad leadership in Game of Thrones. Right, KCPs understand identity and how it affects resistance to change. And they can recognize evolutionary leadership. This is Lou Gerstner. Shortly after he took over at IBM, IBM was in trouble. The mainframe business was in trouble. They were running out of money. They were less than 6 months away from being insolvent. IBM in 1992 was struggling to make its payroll. That's pretty shocking. And at the time, Gerstner was under pressure to break it up into different businesses and sell them off separately. And Thomas Watson Jr., the son of the founder, didn't want that to happen. And he persuaded Gerstner that it shouldn't happen. Gerstner gave a press conference and he famously said, the last thing IBM needs now is a new strategy. We're going to stick with what we do now and we're going to get better at it. And the rest is history. IBM's still one big company. Gerstner was there for 10 years. He successfully passed it on. Meanwhile, we talked about Hewlett-Packard. Here's Carly Fiorino. She was the CEO at that time in the middle of the last decade, and her strategy was to annex a small neighboring country called Compaq and declare victory. And Hewlett-Packard hasn't done so well since Carly Fiorino's time. We teach KCPs to understand what I call the V'ger concept. The V'ger, for the Star Trek fans in the room, you will all know, is the big baddie from the original Star Trek movie, with William Shatner as Captain Kirk and Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock. And this is the V'ger, and they get right into the heart of it towards the end of the movie, and they discover this rusty old piece of space junk inside there. And they realize it's the Voyager space probe from 1997, and it's come back to Earth with a few upgrades. So what's at the heart of your business? Right? Microsoft, 1975, developer tools. Their first product, BASIC. A BASIC interpreter for the Altair 80 computer, sold as an embedded chip inside the machine. Microsoft is a developer tools company. The head of Microsoft now is Satya Nadella. The business unit that he ran before he was promoted to chief executive was the Developer Tools division. If you want to understand Microsoft, you understand that what they do is developer tools. Everything else is peripheral to that. IBM in 1975, they're a mainframe manufacturer. Hewlett-Packard, an electronics company. They started with things like oscilloscopes. Motorola, it's not an accident they were in the mobile phone business. They invented the original walkie-talkie. They're a radio company. The Motley Fool's an American company. They're an investment. They started out as an investment newsletter. And Yahoo, until Marissa Mayer took over, Yahoo was originally a portal. And portals existed because search engines weren't good enough. And then search engines got good enough when Google arrived. And Yahoo turned into a zombie, the world's richest zombie. And it spent about 17 years as a zombie until Marissa Mayer came along and gave them a new identity. KCPs know how to describe culture and affect the sociology of an organization. There's a concept called social entropy. Now, what we have here is a room full of strangers. They don't know anybody. There is no social affinity here. There are no friendships. And in thermodynamics, we would describe this situation as having maximum entropy. It also has maximum optionality, because these people are free to form any social groups they like, if only they could get to know each other better. But the physicists in the room, any physicists here? One. There's always one. And we are the engineering faculty. I did expect a physicist here. So we'll tell you that when you have maximum entropy in a closed system, the only way to fix that is to inject some energy. So we're going to do that now. And the energy is called Justin Bieber. And when Justin Bieber arrives in our space, some of these little quantum particles here, they get excited by the arrival of Justin Bieber. Oh, Justin, we love you. And they become the believers. They love Justin Bieber. Now, Alexei Zheglov and I, Alexei's talking tomorrow on Fit for Purpose, we wrote a book called Fit for Purpose. And in that book, there's half a chapter about Justin Bieber. And when we sent the chapter out to some people to review the manuscript, we discovered that there's a whole set of professional Canadian ladies who have an alter ego of Justin, of Belieber. They're Canadian mommies, and Justin Bieber's a nice-looking little Canadian boy. And they empathize with Justin Bieber's mommy, and they've got kids too, and they love Justin Bieber. And we get all this feedback like, oh, I think you're being too hard on our Justin. Maybe you could tone it down a bit. Meanwhile, the manuscript had gone out to a bunch of, I have to say, middle-aged white guys who looked a bit like me from other parts of the world, and we got back this vitriol. Why are you even talking about this Bieber little prick? I hate that guy. And that was mild. We discovered that the world is peppered full of middle-aged men who fucking hate that Bieber guy. So when you've got believers, everyone else is a non-believer until you discover there's the anti-believers. And this is all you need to know about sociology. It's all you need to know about global politics right now. This is how you polarize a society. As Justin Bieber amps up his good or bad behavior, depending on how you view that, it strengthens the believers. And it strengthens the anti-believers. And when the anti-believers appear in the market, when the believers realize the haters exist, what does that do to the sociology of the believers? It makes them stronger. It makes them tighter knit. They get defensive. And also it flips some of the non-believers who hate the anti-believers, so they become believers. The believers get bigger, and because the believers are getting bigger, the anti-believers gets bigger. This is what's happening in global politics right now in almost every country in Europe and Eastern Europe and North America. Politicians who understand how to manipulate this situation are polarizing society. This is some data from The Economist magazine about British members of Parliament voting on Brexit. Now, the Brexit people are the anti-believers, they're anti-EU, while the Remainers, as they're known, they are pro-EU, and they're mostly the Labour Party and the Scottish National Party. So they believe in the European Union, and look how closely knit they are. Meanwhile, look at the Brexit people. This is Theresa May, the outgoing Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And down here somewhere we have Boris Johnson, Mr. Brexit. So the thing is, why are we where we're at? Because the anti-believers in this situation, they know what they're against. They don't know what they're for. The anti-movement is always weaker than the pro-movement. And that's why they can't get their Brexit shit together. Now, we're pro-European here, right? I run a business in Europe, I run one in the United States. But the reason I'm here, ultimately the reason I'm here is I had to be Brexit-proof. I needed to have a European passport. I needed a business based in Europe. I couldn't take the risk that these idiots would manage to pull this off. Even though I know something about sociology and the current situation was entirely predictable. Right. KCPs know more about sociology because we train this in class and we make them watch 5 movies so that they understand it properly, including Happy Feet, a very educational movie. Those of you with children will know what I mean. Right, we teach them about social capital, the level of trust in an organization, and social cohesion and social innovation. And we teach them about the levers that you can pull and adjust in order to change these things. And we teach them about cultural values. Because if your organization doesn't value the behavior you need in order to be more agile, you're not going to make progress. Now, a lot of leaders will say, well, how do we go about changing the culture? How do we go about introducing values like that? We know how to train that, and I think Steve will talk about it later on today. So we teach that to KCPs, and we teach them this, Ray Immelman's Tribal Behavior Assessment Framework. And this provides a model that says we're going to think about security of individuals and security of the tribe, and value. What he means there is self-esteem. How good do we feel about ourselves as individuals and as a tribe? And actually, the desired quadrant in the upper right is where the tribe feels a little insecure, but individuals feel secure. And the tribe feels a little undervalued, but the individuals feel valued. And really good leaders know how to manipulate a situation so that the perception is in this upper right-hand quadrant for a company, and you get these desirable behaviors. Cooperative effort to strengthen the tribe, personal sacrifice, symbols and symbolic actions become more important. There is a common enemy. Urgency to change, individuals hone their skills, tribal symbols are reaffirmed, strategies are redefined, relationships are reviewed and improved. That means strategic partnerships in a business sense. KCPs know how to motivate change and have a playbook or a means to avoid and overcome resistance. This is a red squirrel. All you Spanish people are familiar with them, the squirrels that exist here in the Iberian Peninsula, most of Europe. This guy here is the grey squirrel. He is an invader from the United States. And grey squirrels were first introduced about here in southwest London in 1876. Some rich person decided, I've got red squirrels in my stately home. Wouldn't it be cute if I also had grey squirrels? We could have like 2 colours. So they brought some grey squirrels from North America, and a few other rich people copied this behaviour, and it caused an ecological disaster. Now, the reason isn't that the grey squirrel's a little bit bigger and tougher and competes for the nuts better. it's mainly because the grey squirrel carries a disease to which it's immune, but the red squirrels aren't. So the red squirrels have been dying. And in Ireland here, the grey squirrel invasion can be tracked down to only 3 pairs, 6 individuals introduced in a rich person's stately home here in the centre of the island of Ireland. Europe has largely survived because of the English Channel, but there has been some introduction of grey squirrels into northern Italy. It's been illegal to import grey squirrels since the 1930s, since before World War II. It's illegal to bring grey squirrels from North America. But if the grey squirrel gets into Europe, it'll cause a lot of trouble. Anyway, this is a metaphor. You start with what you do now. What you do now, that's the red squirrel. And you introduce the new way of doing it. That's the grey squirrel. So when we're driving change, when we're helping people decide what do you do now, what do you leave until later, and what do you not do at all, we don't come along and say, oh, the way you're prioritizing is wrong. You need to stop doing that. Switch to this other way. No, we just teach them a new way of thinking about it, and that's called cost of delay. And cost of delay is related to triage. The concept of what do we do now, what should we leave until later, and what do we not do at all. Triage comes from the Crimean War, the field hospitals there. And how do you decide the cost of delay? It's the rate that the soldier lying on the floor in the hospital is bleeding to death. If that's too fast, sorry, there's nothing we can do. If it's reasonably fast, we need to act now. And if it's a lot slower, we can leave them until later. So, cost of delay is about understanding metaphorically what is the rate you're bleeding to death. And once we teach people to understand that, then they can start to do it. Meanwhile, they've got their return on investment prioritization with their spreadsheets, their business value divided by their cost. It's all bullshit. They made up the numerator. They have some vague clue about the denominator, but we know it's wrong. So a complete fantasy number divided by a wrong number equals a fact, and then we stack rank things according to that ratio. If that had been working, businesses wouldn't need to be doing business agility transitions. So we don't tell them it's wrong because they'll get upset about that. We just teach them the new way of doing it. And you know what? About 6 weeks later, they've stopped doing the old way. The grey squirrel replaces the red squirrel if it's fitter for the environment. And nobody asked anybody to change. KCPs know how to drive this kind of change. In fact, they have a whole playbook of different ways of driving change that we teach them. Avoiding the rock, the emotional resistance for change, the grey squirrel, red squirrel thing. So the limbic brain, system 1 exposure, emotional engagement. Politicians understand this. If you won't pay higher taxes to improve public infrastructure to reduce the traffic jams on your way to work in the morning, politicians let you stew in it. Let's just allow it to get worse and worse. And eventually, people will actually vote for higher taxes to pay for the improvements. The Galapagos Island effect. Isolate the mutant, the change. Give it a chance to survive and thrive and prove its worth. The alpha geek solution. Find the leader of the pack, convince them, everyone else follows, but only if it's a highly cohesive social group, which means you need to understand how to improve social cohesion. Coached identity change, invoke a stronger emotion, never waste a good punctuation point. A punctuation point's anything like political change, regulatory change, you fired the CEO, an acquisition, a takeover, all these kind of things. We have a whole playbook of these. But the really dramatic ones are only at the bottom, because we want you to try the simple things first. Don't reorg. That's a punctuation point. All right? Kanban coaches have 6 or 7 things they can suggest before you even get there. where the competition walk in and say, the first thing you guys need to do is reorg. Basically, the first thing you need to do is the hard shit. Because as a consultant, I don't know how to teach you the simple stuff. Well, Kanban coaches, we've fixed that. They know how to teach you the much simpler stuff. Right. Now, this is a Northern European proverb. The Germans claim it, the Scandinavians claim it, and the Scottish claim it. My view on this is we'll let the Germans and the Scandinavians fight it out, and then we'll declare victory. There's no such thing as bad weather, only inappropriate clothing. There's no such thing as bad Kanban, only inappropriate practices. You got the wrong advice, you're not ready for something yet. Or it's too easy for you, it doesn't create enough stress. And if you're not stressed, you're not motivated to make improvements. Right? KCPs know how to guide managed evolution. They know when to recommend the appropriate practices. That's the key skill. It's about appropriateness. If it's too easy, it doesn't make a difference. And if it's too hard, you choke on it and you abandon it before it really makes a difference. The trick is this sports coaching skill of knowing the current level you're at, pushing you just a little bit out of your comfort zone so that you get better. Just enough stress to provoke the next level of improvement. How many of you here have kids? Kids that are in some kind of sport, might be football or gymnastics or something like that. Do you watch how the coaches do that with your kids, how they develop them, how they get them to be better? They don't teach them really advanced stuff that they see the professionals doing on TV, at least not initially, and certainly not with gymnastics. They have to push them a little bit. If you're going to teach a kid about this big how to turn a cartwheel on a 4-inch beam this high off the ground, that's scary. And they need to be introduced to it gently. But if you're ever going to get them to do it, you need to push them out of their comfort zone. There has to be enough stress. Now, what happens if the gymnastics coach stresses your 8-year-old too much? And you show up at the end of the session to collect your kid, and she comes running off the mats in tears. Mommy, Mommy, I hate gymnastics. I'm never going back. So we recognize two key failure modes in Agile coaching and Kanban coaching. Not enough stress, nothing gets better. False Summit Plateau, we've done Kanban. It was good. We love a bit of transparency. And then the overreaching problem, because you've got some coach who read all the books, attended all the conferences. They are the smartest guy in the room, and they want you to get to maturity level 4 or 5 like this. And you're not ready for it yet. You're that kid running off the mats at the end of gymnastics, crying and saying you're never going back. So appropriateness is the key skill. And we've been teaching that to coaches since 2009. Right, so KCPs come rich with metaphor. We've made them watch a whole bunch of movies and understand how Bruce Lee is related to Justin Bieber. Right, so hire a metaphor-enabled KCP. This is one from Hamburg in Germany. His wife is also here, and she'll take orders. Sitting at the back there, Susanna. She's happy to take your inquiries about hiring Andreas. And you'll be sorted. Without doubt, the best KCPs we have in the world, some of them are in the room here today, they will fix your problems. They will make your business agile. They will take your 600, 1,200, several thousand people organizations, and they'll make it agile. And tomorrow you're going to hear from a whole bunch of those people who've done that already with big companies. You take a look at our program, you see the list there, because it's pragmatic, it's actionable, but it's evidence-based. We have the evidence here. So that was wonderful, yet it's rather self-serving. And it lacks pragmatism, right? Because hey, just hire a KCP, Well, there's only 111 of them right now. There might be 3 more by Wednesday. So we needed something better than that, right? I mean, yes, hire a KCP. I would encourage you to do that. But we needed something that democratized what they know and what I've been teaching them for the last 10 years. And the answer to that is the Kanban maturity model, and we're launching the 1.0 version today. The assets are available to download off the website. The second edition of the book won't be available probably until September. You have a copy of one of the posters, and the rest of the stuff is online. So, Kanban maturity model, we built this idea of understanding how businesses perform and codified it into 7 levels. There were many things that inspired this, and I don't have time to get into the detail on the references, but it goes through oblivious, we're just not organized at all, it's anarchy. Team-focused, customer-driven. Customer-driven, yes, but you know what? If we were, say we're a pizza business, customer comes in, they order a pizza, they ask for ham and pineapple. And there's about an 80% chance they actually got ham and pineapple. There's a 20% chance we accidentally put some pepperoni on there. Or it took us an hour to make it because we lost our order and then found it later, or then they complained and we're like, oh yeah, that's coming right out. So we started making it again. Customer driven. We understand there's customers, but we're not good at serving them. Level 3, fit for purpose. We understand there's customers and they actually get what they asked for. We meet their expectations. This is a good place to be, but it's not particularly sustainable because there's been some great customer service businesses in recent years. One of them was Uber. Well, when the founder, Travis Kalanick, was in charge of Uber, the drivers were sleeping in their vehicles. They were often working 2 shifts. Of course, they're unregulated. Some of them were working as taxi drivers, a regulated industry, for 8 hours, and then working as an Uber driver for another 8 hours. When they were tired, they're sitting there with the Red Bull while they're driving you, trying to stay awake. They weren't earning enough money to service their vehicles. They weren't earning enough money to replace their vehicles. Uber was lending them the money to replace their vehicles because the banks wouldn't. And therefore, Uber drivers were becoming, it's indentured servitude. They are slaves. Their business was inherently fragile. Travis Kalanick had to be replaced with Dara Khosrowshahi. And since then, Uber starts to behave like a level 4 business. They start to play nice with regulators. They start to recognize they're in a regulated industry. Their prices had to go up. They had to make the business sustainable. Level 3 might be good customer service, but it could be martyrdom. So level 4 is risk hedged. We appreciate there's a whole bunch of stakeholders we have to serve. Level 5 is the market leader. If you're racing Formula 1 and you're Mercedes, this is where you are. Not everyone cares about this for their business. Level 4 is a pretty good place to be. And then we recognize this concept of level 6. We call it built for survival, but it's about reinvention. And level 6 leadership isn't needed all that often. A Lou Gerstner who reinvents IBM, a Nelson Mandela who reinvents South Africa. Right, that's the kind of level we're talking about there. It's very high. Level 4 is a good achievement. And you'll notice on the big poster, not the small one we've given you, but if you download the big one, or we have the big one maybe on the wall somewhere here, you'll see it in our office tonight at the party. We only elaborate the 4 levels in the latest version. We've sort of kept level 5 and 6 up our sleeve for a future release. We needed to codify this playbook, what KCPs know, as I said. And the Kanban maturity model now maps, I think it's 156 practices against these 7 levels. So now, someone who's trained in this, they might have read the book, they might have taken the training class, they look at the organization they're in and they say sort of roughly where are we at? And if you assess that you're level 1, maybe 2, you probably shouldn't try the level 3 and 4 practices yet. Try to get good at the things that are at level 1 and 2 till you're ready for the next level. Now, it took us 12 years to learn this stuff. It took us about 2.5 years to codify it and put it together, to test it in the market. We've been testing it with companies like BBVA here in town, Vanguard and JP Morgan in the United States, Zurich Insurance. Some of those case studies you'll see in the conference. This is a quote from Amazon, a review of the book. These are probably the only Agile consultants that do not push their own unique jargon and solutions because they know what they are doing. Thank you. Thank you, Carl. Amanda's here actually to present the Petrobras story, but we liked her quote from reviewing the book. Kanban maturity models, agile for adults, for grown-ups. We're not facilitating ceremonies here. We're changing business outcomes. The Kanban maturity model exists to provide actionable guidance. Given where you are, the KMM suggests what you can and should do next. So it solves these two failure modes. The false summit plateau, no, there's an entire map of things you could be doing to improve your business results. And it solves the smartest guy in the room problem of your coach encouraged you to go too far too soon. It makes that much more obvious. And from a customer perspective, you now have something that enables you to hold your consultants accountable. If you're going to have an army of people earning $300,000 a year as contractors, wouldn't it be good if there was actually a way of measuring whether those people actually knew anything and were giving you good advice? The KMM, yeah, we've seen that. Did I go the wrong way there? Yeah, 12 years of real-world case studies, observed behavior, outcomes, and empirical evidence. So it provides a roadmap. And this takes away a lot of the fear, because evolutionary change sounds a bit scary. So, David, tell me, what's the outcome going to be? Well, you're going to get better than you are now. Oh, what do you mean exactly? How will we know when we're finished? Which is a bit of a stupid question when you're talking about evolutionary change. Evolution, when will we know we're done? So the whole evolutionary change message was scary for people, but now we have a map and it says, if you would like a fully risk-hedged business where all your stakeholders are happy, your customers love you, and it's entirely sustainable for a very long time into the future, we call that level 4. And here's a map. And if you can do those things, you'll get there. Oh, and here's a case study that tells you about a company that's already done it. It takes away the fear. It makes it more of a guided evolution, and potentially that there's some target, but the target's a business outcome. It's not practice adoption. So it provides this ladder to resolve this structural tension of where we are now and where we want to be. Because if you're currently level 1, and he's not here, Jose Casal, is he? But he's a consultant in London, Spanish guy. Well, one of his financial clients came up to him and said, Jose, we love this KMM thing you're talking about. We think we're level 2. We'd like you to take us to level 4. Well, first of all, there's coded language there. We think we are level 2. That translates as we are level 1. So we're level 1, we'd like you to take us to level 4, set course for maturity level 4, work factor 3, engage. That's a recipe for failure. There's too much tension there. Stretching too much. That's the little girl running off at the end of gymnastics crying, saying, I hate gymnastics, I'm never coming back. But we can take that away because, hey, if you're level 1 and you aspire to level 4, let's try for level 2. Let's see if we can make that work. And if we make that work, how about we try for level 3? Takes away a lot of the tension, just enough stress to provoke you to get better and not too much that you break. Right, so back to the cartoon, what maturity level is this organization? In the interests of time here, I'll tell you that they're not level 3 or 4. They might be level 2 because they've got workflow. But on the other hand, they might be level 1. We don't have quite enough evidence. It's only a cartoon. However, they're prepared to do something about it. We see that the elements here, they've got some visualization on what they're doing. They've got some stress. They've got a reflection mechanism. They've got an active leadership. And potentially this is a level 2 organization moving to level 3. You'll see that when you look at the detail of this in Theodora's presentation. We've also codified this evolutionary change model. Steve and I did this in Bilbao about a year ago now, June of last year, in an apartment I'd rented over on Recalde for the locals who might actually care. So the idea is that you've got an organization that's usually pretty happy. They're team-focused. They're maturity level 1. We've got hundreds of agile teams and lots of little smiley faces on our Nicky calendars, or whatever they're called. We've got all these happy teams. Of course, the business isn't actually improving. Now we need to disrupt that a bit. We need to push some practices on those people to make them unhappy with the status quo. But they're probably fearful of the future. What do you mean we need to collaborate with other teams? What do you mean we need to care about customer metrics? So we need to get them over that, and that's the opportunity for the coach. All right, so we introduce the stressors, we disrupt them a bit, and then we consolidate them to the next level with some coaching. All right, so this is where there's still a role for Andreas. We haven't completely replaced him. Or, for that matter, Peter and Jaume, who've probably been sitting there thinking, oh my God, we're going to lose our jobs at Zurich. They're just going to read this book and use the posters. All right, so the idea is you're at level 1. We disrupt it a bit. We consolidate, get you to level 2. Now you're at level 2. We introduce a bunch of the practices there in the transition level. We disrupt that and we consolidate again. We get you to level 3. And we've codified all these practices. And we codified them by seeing them in the stories that we've documented. Case studies we've had written, that we've commissioned or we've done ourselves, or we have 12 years of conference material, 11 years of conference material and videos like the one we're making now. We have lots of evidence to have built this, and it took us 2.5 years to have some confidence that we think we've got it right. So we've now codified the coaching practices for taking the level you're at, disrupting it and consolidating it to the next level. So it's not just the practices the organization should be adopting that are repeatable, it's the practices the coaches should be using with you which are also repeatable. All right, so tales of transition. These are real ones, right? ML1 to ML2. Every team reports that they deliver on their commitments, but I know that customers are waiting longer than 6 months for delivery. And this was an agile coach at an internet equipment manufacturer in the suburbs of Boston, very famous internet equipment manufacturer. And he was like, psst. He took me out in the corridor and he said, you know, everyone in there says we meet our sprint commitments and they're all very proud of the Scrum implementation, but I've got to tell you, customers are waiting 6 months. We deliver something every 2 weeks and we don't really. We're just kidding ourselves. That's maturity level 1, okay. So you might have a board that looks like this. A next, this is your sprint backlog and in progress and done. And what's wrong here? The diagnosis: lack of service orientation, localized metrics and objectives, no customer recognizable work items, lack of collaboration across service delivery workflow. Because why are those customers waiting for 6 months? Because, hey, our team finished in 2 weeks. The fact that the next team down the line, they didn't pick the work up for another 2 months, well, they finished in 2 weeks, and everyone reports we're finishing in 2 weeks, and the customer's like, you guys are jokers. I've been waiting here for 6 months. Right, so what do we do about it? Static, that's short for the system thinking approach to implementing Kanban. We teach that in our basic training. There's a whole bunch of Kanban trainers in the room here that teach those exercises. Customer recognizable work item types. It's not a task. It's not a ticket in Jira. Your customer walks into Starbucks. They order a cup of coffee. The work item's called a drink or a cup of coffee. Right? Service-oriented workflow board. In other words, what you're tracking on the board should be the thing the customer cares about. And a system capability review, which is basically saying, okay, we make cups of coffee for our customers. How good are we at doing that? And if we're not good enough at it, how do we get better? And this takes you to something that will look more like this. Level 2 maturity Kanban board. Whole bunch of different teams collaborating in a workflow. Well, team 1 here, team 2, team 3. We call this an aggregated team Kanban board. It's a pattern. So Kanban design patterns are part of the Kanban maturity model. What about level 2 to level 3? I haven't looked at the lead time chart in months. This was a software development manager at Huawei in China. And what's wrong there? Well, basically, nobody actually cares how fast they get it done. No one's holding them accountable for the customer expectations. So, is there a service delivery manager role present? In other words, is there someone responsible for taking the customer's order and actually ensuring whether we delivered it or not? Because often in siloed organizations, that doesn't exist, and therefore nobody actually cares about whether we delivered to the customer. And hence the customers report things like, this has taken 6 months and it should have been about 2 weeks. Are the customer expectations understood and communicated? Well, if there's no one actually too bothered about the customer, probably not. And is there a service delivery review happening? So system capability review, you turn that up a notch. And now we say, okay, we've got a customer. The customer expects delivery within 3 months. How good are we at doing that? That's the stressor and the reflection mechanism, service delivery review. So these things are about injecting the right stressors and the right reflection mechanism. Then all you need is an active leadership, someone who says, let's do something about it. Is there any blocker management? Is blocker likelihood and impact being reported? Is there a risk review? Is the lead time distribution thin or fat-tailed? It's a little bit mathematical, but it basically means if we're recording how long it takes to do something and we build a histogram of that, does the histogram have a long tail out here and this is the item that took 1.5 years? And we don't like that. It's unpredictable. These are all practices that are codified in the KMM. So, what do we do here? We implement the service delivery manager role. We implement the service delivery review, meeting, practice. We implement some blocker metrics, the risk review practice. We capture customer expectations and their fitness criteria. What is the customer expecting in order to be happy? And we use that as the stressor. All of this is codified, those 156 practices. It's a lookup table. All right, Tales of Transition, level 3 to 4. We just put out a release on time, met our commitments, but our product management team reacted with a WTF is this. This is actually captured in one of our case studies you can download from our website. It's a company called Mobile in Berlin. It's a subsidiary of eBay. And work items weren't meaningful and understood by the customer, in this case the internal customer, the product managers. There was asynchronous commitment. Basically the product managers would say, we want this, and we want this, and we want this, and at some separate time the development team would come along and say, oh, they want that? All right, yeah, I fancy that one right now. Let's take that one. And then they'd break it up into a whole bunch of user stories, and they would show up on their Kanban board, and the customers had no idea what this stuff was and what it related to. And consequently, they put a release out on schedule, and the marketing people are like, what? Who told you to do this? Well, they told themselves to do it. Well, it's a failure. But that's a level 3 to 4 failure. All right, so pull from part, yeah, I've explained that. All right, implement two-tiered Kanban board. That's what they did. New coarse-grained work item type, feature, something the customer cares about. Synchronous commitment. Let's put the customers and the development team in the same room at the same time so that they can say, we want this feature. And, oh yeah, we'll do it for you then. Full replenishment meeting with customers. That's what I've just described. The synchronous commitment, the idea that both sides commit at the same time. And the customers are committing to the coarse-grained work item that they understand, the feature they want, not some user stories they don't understand. And that fixes the problem. And all these practices are codified in the model. Okay, so where did we start at the beginning here? If only there was a way to avoid the need for senior executive support. Well, now there is. We call that the Kanban maturity model. If only there was a way to avoid or overcome resistance to change. Well, now there is. We've codified it in the Kanban maturity model. If only there was a means to build more trust. Well, now there is. We've codified it in the Kanban maturity model. If only we had better KPIs. If you've read Fit for Purpose, you understand that we've codified the Fit for Purpose framework into the Kanban maturity model. If only we had a way to encourage teams to collaborate with each other. That's like maturity level 1 to 2. We've codified it in the Kanban maturity model. If only we had more leadership. Steve's going to present our leadership model a little later, and that's the leadership practices extension for the Kanban maturity model, and we'll publish that in the second half of this year. You're the first to see it as a conference presentation today. If only we had fewer dependencies. Well, we've got something called enterprise services planning. Alexei Zheglov was teaching that over in our training center in downtown Bilbao here last week. And we've codified that in the Kanban maturity model, although it's a little bit higher maturity stuff. If only customers were more responsive. Again, some of this is from our enterprise services planning material, but we've codified it in the Kanban maturity model. If only we could prioritize better, we had better finer-grained stories, we had direct access to customers, priorities didn't change so frequently, and planning wasn't so painful. That's our enterprise services planning stuff. Not everything is fixed with the Kanban maturity model. We've gone a long way, but it doesn't solve all the world's problems. If only we didn't measure the wrong things, we're organized differently, we had T-shaped people, we had true cross-functional teams, and we had capacity when we needed it. Well, the solution to these problems is codified in the Kanban maturity model. We have come a very long way with this tool. It's the most powerful enterprise agility tool on the market by a very long way. There's no such thing as bad Kanban, only inappropriate practices. Let the Kanban maturity model be your guide and use it to hold your consultants accountable. Get some value for money for a change. And with that, thank you all very much.